I would like to call this meeting the Great Island Advisory Committee to order for Wednesday, September 20th. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. So I will start. Okay. So what we'll do first is just to do a quick review and approval of the minutes. We've got minutes from our first two meetings here. I had a chance to read through them. I think the only correction I had was in the August 23rd meetings. I think it says working with DEEP on the water buoys. That's DEEP instead of DEP. Is that right? The Department of Environmental Protection. It's
Two
energy.
E's.
Yeah, two E's.
Two E's.
Two E's. All right. But that's the only correction I come up with. Mark?
There were a couple of spelling errors under the staff section. It's Monica McNally as opposed to Monica, and Edward Gentile as opposed to Eddard.
I missed that. Thank you. I missed those two. Okay. All right, I will pass those. Who does the minutes for these, or I just send these to Linda? A couple corrections?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, could I get a motion to approve both sets of minutes as amended? Mr. Burke? Mark, second. All in favor? Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, next up, our first selectman is going to give us an update.
Hi, everyone. So on Great Island related items, last Sunday, Pastor Greg Dahl of the Norotan Presbyterian Church blessed the new Norotan Fire Department boat, Marine 34, before members of the 3 fire departments. So the town will continue using our police and fire department boats off of Great Island to monitor the water courses and ensure public safety. And I want to thank the Steinkraus family for allowing us to dock our boat there for 35 plus years. So a really wonderful thing for the town. So NPR reached out last week to interview me about the island in connection to a book written by Linda Civitello, The Baking Powder Wars, the cutthroat food fight that revolutionized cooking book. So I think that as time goes on, there'll be a lot of really interesting stories that come out of the island, including more about William Ziegler Sr., who was a baking powder leader in the world. So ground tours for Great Island will be this Saturday. They'll be from 9 to 4:30, and they'll be providing for residents, almost 700 residents, a chance to see the island. Some of them for the first time. So we're really excited about that. We'll have 3 buses that will be going from Pear Tree to the island, doing a loop and coming back. And depending on the weather, we were planning for a couple of stops. Nothing indoors, but 2 stops outdoors. But we'll see. I think it's supposed to rain. So. But I want to thank the people that have stepped forward to help out on the tour, and I think it'll be really interesting. So thank you for your help there. Look forward to seeing you.
Well, thank you for that idea. I mean, I just absorbed for a minute, 700 people have signed up for bus tours, right? This is not anything.
No, it's a school bus.
It's a school bus.
Yeah.
And it's really great. Are there plans maybe for other tours? Since I think they were sold out almost immediately.
Yeah, this was really, really popular, and we wanted to get this in while it's still nice out. So we'll look to see if we can do another tour. And for people, I forgot to mention, but for the people that have volunteered, such as you, Jeff, looking at you, Mike, I'll have a script for you, so you'll be on the bus and you'll be talking to people as they stop at each location. And thank you, and I know a lot of you are not in town Saturday, so appreciate it. And Mark, you're gonna let me know, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So I think
yeah.
you're signed up.
Yes, you're there all day.
I
Sorry.
don't get to tour, I just got to stand there and
Yeah.
look handsome, which I can do.
Yeah,
So.
I think so. So that's it.
Okay, very good. Next up, as we've got a pretty extensive update from Mr. Ed Gentile.
Thank you very much. Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works, Town of Darien. I have a long list of stuff, so I'm going to try to get through it, and if you could hold the questions to the end, I'm more than happy to answer them. I think that would be the most efficient use of our time.
Sure.
Okay. I want to touch on the very first topic is the environmental piece. It just so happens today we did meet with Director of Health, David Knopf, to give him an update also, so I had a chance to practice a little bit of how to get this wrapped up so it's easy to understand for you folks. And we updated on our environmental findings as part of our purchase and moving ahead for discussing remediation. So there were environmental assessment reports that were commissioned by the town prior to the final purchase of the town's owning Great Island. During those reports, environmental issues were identified, which brought us to using our vendor and consultant to give us some remediation processes, if you will. So just to give you an overall view of what that site entails, some of the issues that come up were identified above what they call the residential direct contract criteria. Basically, you can't touch it. It's not supposed to be touched. But unfortunately, that's part of these sites that have old apple orchards that require pesticides and so on. So the arsenic was the one main key that kind of raised to a level that we were looking at. But there are other parts of the site had what they called significant environmental hazards. Okay, those would be PCBs, lead, or any arsenic above 15 times the minimum criteria. Okay, so just so you know, those areas must be reported to DEP and must be remediated within 90 days. All of those areas had been taken care of before our purchase. All right, so those things that needed to be reported, taken care of immediately, have been done before we took ownership of the property. Now, taking us back to the direct contact criteria, we identified some areas at the throughout the island. We've talked to our consultant about different methods and systems to remediate those soils. So it could be anything from tilling and mixing the soil to get it below the level. It could be soil capping. They allow that. You need to put a foot of soil on top of it. There's a barrier you put between the two, and then you can plant grass on top of it, and you can actually use the facility and the property like you would any other park. But one other process that we came up with, the first selectman was able to find, and our consultant was able to help us administer, is a pilot program for what they call phytoremediation. I think you guys, some of you folks may know what that is. It's where the plants actually take that heavy metal out of the ground and into the plant itself. It is harvested, taken away, and disposed of properly, depending on its levels. So currently, we are in the middle of the pilot program. We prepared the site. We planted the site. We had to fence it. We had some animals over there that like to enjoy some of the vegetation we were planting. We did some weeding. We actually installed a really quick sprinkler system so we keep it watered through the summer. And we started that in the beginning of June. There were some mid-growing cycle testing that was done. We're just going through those analysis right now because the test takes so long to get back. We got some good information back from that. We're going to use that to extend the pilot program to a couple other areas. I think one of the key items for us was, picking a location that wasn't in close proximity to any of the residents, but we could monitor and maintain. So right now, those levels there, they were just a little bit over the minimum level. What we're thinking about doing now and would like to do is pick an area that's a little bit higher, because we want to see what the extraction levels are in these plants through their one growing cycle, and I think that's important. So we're looking at doing that now. The end of the first growing cycle, though, is the beginning of October, and we will take test results from that pilot program, the initial one at that time, and include those test results into these environmental assessment reports that we have. And upon conclusion of those reports, they will be made to the public. So that takes care of what I would consider the hot topic for the environmental piece. There's one little other piece that we have, and I know you folks all know this. We do have an eagle's nest on the property. It's regulated by DEP, and just so you know, I'm in contact with the Wildlife Division right now, trying to get some information back on what we can and cannot do in close proximity. I think people have been using a separation distance, but I'd like a little bit more information, because we're gonna want to do some work out there, and we should know what the regulations are. So hopefully he'll get back to me in a couple days. Now I'm going to get into the infrastructure, service, and maintenance piece of this, just so you know what we've been doing out there. We do have a landscaper that's going to be working through his summer contract till the beginning of December. We are currently reviewing his winter proposal and kind of trying to put a scope of work together so that we can put actually a price that's, that we believe is feasible and appropriate. We do have, we have new garbage pickup now. We are addressing heating oil. We just had the septic systems pumped down. We still have a propane delivery for the stables. We are beginning to look at winterizing the buildings that are unoccupied. Main House, Beach Cottage, Juliet House. We do it with all our facilities now. We are scheduling and looking at doing them out on the island right now. The one trick will be that there are a portion of the main house is connected to the Dolphin House, which is occupied. So we're going to have to possibly valve that off so we can shut off the main house more and not have to heat the entire building to do it. But we're looking into that, if that's a possibility. We're doing catch basin cleaning on sites. There's still tree removals. We are finding more dead trees out there and trees that are cracked and compromised. We want to make sure the place is safe, so we continue to remove them when it's brought to our attention. We have a couple left to do. We have a sprinkler system and the outdoor riding we have to winterize, and our camera systems we monitor on a weekly basis right now. We download all the photos and videos to the town server, so they're available if we need them. So that takes care of our infrastructure, service, and maintenance. I'll get more into the buildings towards the end, just to give you an idea of what we're doing on some of them. But let's talk about the access plan. I think that's the next piece. You know, getting two-way traffic in through the access way off of Rings End Road, Goodwise River, that entrance, the gated entrance. So right now, our driveway entrance design includes I'm sorry, Monica, do you want me to show the plan that we have, or
Yeah.
put it on the table now so you can at least take a look at it while I'm talking? Sorry, you know, I should have audit two of these, so I apologize. Here's the plan right now. It's very, very preliminary. And it is, I'll say it is subject to change. It's 22 feet wide driving area. There is a 5-foot sidewalk shown on the south side of the driveway at this time. There will be approximately, with this plan, 16 tree removals. There are retaining walls that will be required. The design does include a planting plan to address those tree removals so that we can provide the screening that has been lost. And driveway lighting has been included on this plan, and we're just beginning to discuss that. Right now, there's 9 solo lights, and at the 2 pillars at the entrance, we planned on 2 sconces on the top of the pillars themselves.
Be able to spare those 2 pillars and move them out?
One of them we will be able to, the other one we'll have to rebuild. Right now, the entranceway is approximately 14 feet wide. To get a 22-foot road in there will require us to take down one of those pillars, but we do plan on rebuilding it so that the symmetry is there when we're done. What's going to happen now, once we get this plan to about 75%, we have to go through the approval process. And that approval process is going to include P&Z, EPC, and ARB. And just to give you a quick list of plans, we have plan and profile, we have landscaping plan, soil erosion plan will have to definitely be included. Retaining wall design, we need a drainage impact study and statement done. Coastal reporting from our engineer, roadway lighting plan, just to show the extent and of the photometric layout.
No traffic report or traffic plan?
We hadn't talked about that yet, to be honest with you. And you know, that's a good question, and I'll speak to Jeremy about that. Thank you. I'm sorry. So there's a schedule that we've kind of tentatively put together right now. And then starting in October, hopefully being able to submit a plan to them to accept. That would be ARB and EPC. End of October, P&Z. We're going to run these things concurrent as we go through. November, there'll be a EPC public hearing and possibly ARB second meeting where they'll give us their final comments.
I'm sorry, could you define those acronyms?
Oh, I'm sorry. Planning and zoning is P&Z.
Right.
EPC is Environmental Protection Commission. and ARB is Architectural Review Board.
Thank you.
So that takes us into November, where there's there most likely, according to to Jeremy Ginsburg, EPC public hearing. There'll be a P&Z public hearing. That's in November. In December, we'll have, hopefully, EPC decision and a P&Z decision. That's a very, very tight and aggressive schedule, but it's something that can be obtained if we get the final design up and ready to go. Yes, sir.
I know you mentioned drainage study. Do you expect that, or does this plan include addressing any drainage needs that the increasing the width of the roadway might require?
It'll be included in the statement,
Okay.
and the statement could say as much as the increasing the width and impervious surface may or may not cause an impact, and we're addressing it this way. When you're this close to the Long Island Sound in the lower 1/3 of the watershed, they don't encourage you to do any type of detention, but they do encourage you, in any project, to address water quality measures, which could be deeper sumps in your catch basins, some type of rain gardens, of something like that. So they're looking at water quality more than actually water volume.
But Ed, from a high level, maybe for the public, the road's currently about 18 feet, and we're looking at making it about 22 feet.
Correct, and that, the 18 feet, if you look at it, that's asphalt plus the cobblestone gutters.
And does that same width carry into the island itself? Because you're going to have a loop there, and is that, you're going to have the same sort of road width consistency?
Well, right now, this plan is going to stop at the turnaround.
Okay.
We haven't looked at, and I think that's probably something this committee is going to discuss, is direction, width, bi-directional, one way. I think that's going to dictate how wide we make these roadways, if we need to make them wider at all.
Okay.
So once we get through December, there'd be a time in December, January to finish and complete the plans with all of the recommendations and stipulations from those boards. Hopefully, January, February, bid documents and bidding procedure, and hopefully March, April, start some type of construction. We're looking at a 3-month window for construction. I'm looking at July 1st. I know the first selectman wants me to look more at June 1st, and I will do my very best to get it there. But again, this is a very aggressive schedule.
Sorry, just following up on that, so you're talking about roads to get access to the island. I mean, if we're talking about public access, wouldn't you reasonably need the road on the island itself also sorted out and paved and designed? And so when you talk about getting all these plans done and ready and submitted to those boards for approval, don't we also have to have plans for the rest of this? The reason I'm asking is that if we're going, there's a dividing line between not open, no public access, and then, okay, open, public access. And I just want to make sure that everything that you have to have in place for public access has a design plan timeline and is also going to get approved within this it's concurrently to all this other stuff. Is that what you're doing? Or?
It is with a target that the vehicular traffic on that island will be one-way and circular. And with that in mind, the roadways right now are plenty wide enough to handle that.
But there's a paving issue. They're not ready for prime time, and that's at least the sections I saw.
That's simply paving, and that we can do without any type of permitting from planning and zoning.
So
Just maintenance of the work. I'm sorry.
So is it correct, like, this needs to be two-way, just because it's only one way to kind of get on and out? The rest of it, you know, I guess if we wanted it to be two-way, it'd need to be a little bit wider, but if we wanted to maintain it one way, we could use the current width. So like, this is sort of, I guess, a necessary condition to get vehicular traffic on the island.
Correct.
But to your point, the very next step is where a car is going to park when they get through that point. So
Right.
the where's the parking lot go?
Right, so we've got a single unidirectional road, or one-direction road. You can come in and out, but if you're going to stop, you got to stop somewhere.
Yep.
And if we got 700 people on the bus tour, I'm assuming we'll have a number of people who want to be on the island. What are we going to do with them? But I guess we'll get to that.
My next bullet point is parking.
Excellent.
You guys planned this?
Yes, we did. Scripted it.
So I will tell you at the very, not the very beginning, towards the very end of the purchase, we were asked to look at different scenarios, whether it be, sewer services and use of the facilities and, water, whatever it may be. One of them was parking. So I did some layout throughout the whole island, and some very small pocket parking areas. Handled maybe 10 spaces, but they were opposite and along the roadway, and they were gravel. So those areas I've laid out, I think the only thing that I need is guidance from you folks on what your thoughts are with regard to parking. I mean, I've made and looked at some of the general areas around the main house to put bigger parking areas in that area of the island. Also around the outside riding rink, there may be opportunities to put parking down closer to the boat ramp down there and use that area also. So those are just my ideas. It's a very preliminary layout, but I got about 200 spaces laid out on that island right now.
You didn't pave over the riding rink, huh?
The whole riding rink or the sand part?
Just kidding.
You have to be a little more specific on that one. He said ominously. Okay. Right, so that kind of covers my parking work and preliminary design that I've done right now.
Handicap has got to be addressed, handicap access.
There'll have to be
Talk about gravel.
there'll have to be
That's a problem.
handicap spaces, yes, absolutely. And I think we'll address them like we did up at Highland, with some pocket asphalt spaces. And, and to be honest with you, I haven't spoken to Jeremy, but he'll probably guide us on how many things we need throughout the whole site. And we want to strategically place them too. We just don't want to randomly put them there.
So is the idea that when this is ready to go, I guess you said July, and Monica said June, so I'll say May. So when this is ready to go in May, is the idea that you'd have some pocket parks ready to go at that time as well?
Yes. Yeah, so we're talking, it's October now, that's we have 9 months. To put parking out there is not a big deal, but again, something that needs to be looked at, designed properly, with some thought of, where we take this to the future to. I hate like anything to put in parking and then have to move it. Small stuff, yeah, but larger pieces, you don't want to do that. So a little forethought. My forethought was, how many can I fit on the island? I think you folks are going to guide me a little bit, and with some great questions on where do we think we need the parking to for this go-around.
So really, perhaps, as we consider parking, I think we ought to talk about what the philosophy is. And if there are initial parking areas, we don't want them to necessarily be drivers as to what ultimately is going to be in particular parts of the island. I think we're talking about, access and not trading away or not postponing access until we figure out other aspects of the island. But I think that's something that, we have to talk about further. But if I understand the philosophy is that let's get folks on the island, let's get them there, safely, and that should be our overall, philosophy and what those numbers are. If it's only 200 or if it's 250 or 300 or whatever it is as we sort through it, understanding that that's maybe not the ultimate desired access, but or parking abilities, but it's to get us started, which is what is a big priority.
Start.
Yeah. And, I want to preface this by saying you had one engineer look at it, and he has one vision. And I'm sure there's, 9 others sitting in this room and around this table right now. And that's what's going to feed a better design, and anticipate as best you can what you think could happen out there. That's all we can do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Could we get a map of your conceptual pocket locations?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Sure. I will have to, you know what, I'd like to plan, I'll put it on the topo that we have.
One thing I think with these large number of people coming on Saturday is we could kind of gauge where the interest gravitates, and that might help inform us in informing you.
I know you folks have been out to the island. It's a little overwhelming the first time you go out there and you walk around. So it usually takes 2 or 3 trips before you say, you know, this is kind of where I like it, or this is a really good place to look from, or this is a nice place to hang out, or a path or a bridle path to walk. But you may get some great feedback.
Right, and I know we're not getting out, but just where the interest,
Yeah.
the buzz seems to be on the bus.
Right. That gets me to my maintenance projects. You asked me to kind of prioritize the ones I'd like to do now and kind of give you a flavor. After listening to you folks at the last meeting, I did put some things together. I've put some other stuff on hold. Working with Tony, basically just every day talking about getting estimates on certain things and trying to put together a plan to address some of the things. But I wanted to make sure you folks were still on board with doing that. Sorry. So I put together a bid for the transformer removals. I think that's important. There's 4 of them. The bid opening is on October 19th. At that point, we'll move ahead as soon as the insurance and contract is set, PO is in place, and we'll get those taken care of. And as you folks, just a reminder, there's 2 at the main house, 1 at the pink house, 1 at the electric vault, and I have to shut down the power on the island to test and to remove those. It shouldn't take long to do each site, but I won't be moving to each site, turning the power back on and off. Once I shut it down, we're gonna go to each site, move them out of harm's way, and then get the power back on. And that estimated cleanup cost is somewhere between $25,000 and $35,000. Really depends on what we find in those transformers as far as PCB levels go. The next topic I'd like to do is the asbestos removal at 2 of the locations that are occupied. The stable is one in the basement, and the pink house basement, where we have a tenant also. I don't have a cost for that, and I'd like to put a bid together to see what it would cost. And if you'd like, I could bring that back to you for your thoughts on that. But I think that's important, especially the two locations that are occupied. The other one on the main house, I think we talked about that as not being an immediate issue to address, but the other 2 I thought were.
And there are no other sites on the island that have the prospect of asbestos contamination.
In talking about this last time, I think we talked about there's asbestos in some of the sheetrock, there's asbestos in some of the walls, but as long as you don't touch them, you're fine. This is the asbestos pipe wrap and boiler wrap that you can visually see and come in close contact with. My recollection also is that we talked about oil tank removals, and it wasn't something you folks wanted me to take on right now until we really knew how we were going to use the island. But I do want to get prices to do the tightness tests. We are going to be filling these tanks with oil to keep them heated through the winter. I'd like to contact a vendor, get maybe a price to do it, kind of to have a discussion with him about the implications of doing it now and any danger of damaging the tank or any of the systems before I do anything. But
These are the above-ground tanks?
these are the below-ground tanks, the ones underground. So I'm going to move on that.
And what's involved in that? Pumping the fuel out, testing it, and then putting it back?
They test it in place. That's why I want to know what kind of possible damage could be done and what results would you be looking for to tell me that I have an issue with the tank and how do I address it.
For clarity, you're moving forward with getting the tightness testing arranged? Or
Yes,
moving
at least open a
Getting
discussion and see what the cost is, and then before I do anything, especially with that, because I know you folks had discussions about, how to go about doing it, if we should do it, I'll come back and discuss that with you, of course. We spoke about roofs. We did talk about the stable dormer. That one needed to be done. I told you that the estimate we had was a little over $8,000. Well, we went out and got a couple extra quotes, and we got it down to $3,750. We did check his accreditations. We did check his references. It came back clean. So we're going to set that one up to get that one taken care of. We have a tenant living in that dormer area, and we do have a leak in that building. There's another roof, the squash building. We talked about that. There was a price to do that. We're going to take that on ourselves. DPW is going to go up there and make that watertight. Probably the cost will be about maybe $100 in shingles, just to make it watertight. It won't be perfect, but it'll be watertight. And I think that's what I'm looking for right now. The stone garage, that price was way out of line for us to even try to take that on now. That's on hold right now.
That was 100, right?
That was $80,000 to $100,000.
Is there anything temporary that can be done there, or?
There's an awful lot of damage to that.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like no easy answers on that.
There's not, it's, you know,
It's
if
been
you
like
want,
that.
if you want to put
Yeah.
if you want to put a tarp over, that's probably the only thing you could do to keep the water out.
But it's been.
It's been like that for years now.
This is one that was damaged by the tree that fell on the back.
Correct.
And that cost, just as we think about that, because that is, you know, if you look at sort of the slate roof and so forth,
Mhm.
would that be to repair it as is in conformity with the rest of it, so it all sort of looks the same?
You know, that's the idea, right? We're trying to
Is that what
match
the
it up.
cost estimate was for?
Yeah, and there's other locations throughout that building that need it too. Not just the part where the tree hit it.
This feels like one where we need to make a decision about what we're going to do, because if you're going to keep it, you're going to want to make it nice and not just patch it. Right, and or if you're not going to keep it, then you take it down, but it feels like a halfway, sort of partially addressing this might be a waste of money.
Yeah.
Well, in conjunction with that, and to your point, is an understanding that what it would entail to then bring back all the damage or remediate all the damage that's been done throughout this time where there's been leaking and there have been other issues. So I would think that we would look at what it would really cost to make it what we want, and if that is something that we would be interested in, or just
But
going on without it.
That's exactly the right point. Let's wait until we decide what we want.
Right.
To Monica's point, it's been that way for years, and
Right.
it'll be fine a month from now.
The damage is already done.
Correct.
And it's
Right.
it's a garage.
So
It's an unfinished garage, if I
Yes,
recall.
yeah. So it's
On the inside, right?
But it's a
Yeah.
very cool garage.
It's
Very cool.
very, very cool
But it's
garage.
very rough.
Yeah.
It's in bad shape.
It's a stone garage. It'll be okay with the water to it. So, but to all of your points, it should come with a project. It shouldn't be just a one-off repair.
Yeah, let's just wait.
And your estimate was very rough,
Yes.
right?
That, I think the roofer was a little scared to give out any number that was ever even better defined. All right, just a couple more things to touch base. The boat dock, we need to winterize water service out there. We're going to be doing that. We did remove the ladder from the dock to help prevent some of our guests that have been coming onto the island. And I tell you, they come on during the day and they come on at night. So maybe this will be helpful. And at the top of the ramp, we're looking to get estimates to put a gate with a key punch and just one of those key punch things, and a fence installation on the top of it so people can't get onto the island. Just kind of belts and suspenders down, see if we can stop the intrusion.
Is there any other boat access taking place in other parts of the island, or is it just there that you know?
Not that we're aware of and not that we've seen on security. Beach Cottage is going to need winterization. We still have on hold the buoy deployment for the jetty, and so is the underground electric still on hold.
Is that on hold because we just haven't looked into it yet, or have we approached like the harbor master and
Yeah.
Coastal Waters Commission?
Are you talking about the speed
You're talking about the,
buoys?
No?
We're approved for 6 buoys, and we have 5 buoys out there. So initially, I asked, and I was told that we had to apply for another permit, but I think that we have room to put one, but we need to confirm that. So you see what I'm saying, is that we're okay for 6 from deep. We have 5 out there. So to put another one out, we should be okay, but I'm not positive.
And John was checking on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, which buoys are these?
We're thinking about putting a buoy down. Well, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah.
There's a jetty out off of the Beach Cottage.
Right.
You'll see it at low tide.
Yep.
But at high tide, you don't see it. And what we thought we would need out there and should put out there is some type of warning buoy,
Oh, those kind of buoys, okay.
just to let you know that, you're coming close and there's something under the water you may or may not see or know about. I think it's a safety feature we should.
Understood. Thank you.
At one time, they had rebar sticking on the top. We've already cut those down and out.
Got it.
Main house, winterized, I already talked about it. The Dolphin House is occupied, so it's going to be a little bit tricky. And we do plan on repairing those doors in some temporary fashion and DPW will do that work to correct some of the deficiencies and thresholds around the doors and the door jambs that are letting in debris, wind, rain into the building. So we're going to tighten that up. Stable, we have servicing of the boiler to do. We have a sump pump in there that needs to be checked. Again, DPW will do the sump pump inspection, and we'll bring in a contractor to service the boiler. The White House, there's a pool fence enclosure that is required. We do have a quote. It's a little bit high. We're looking at different quotes right now. The quote we got was a little over 12 grand to fence that in. So Tony is getting additional quotes right now to see if we can get that number to a more, palatable figure. We do have a sump pump at that location. DPW will be scheduling that work to inspect it, make sure it's still functioning. We do that on a regular basis right around the fall time when the groundwater conditions are a little bit higher and we get a little bit more rain. And finally, the pink house, we do have a floor drain under that Bilco door that we have to snake out and clean to get it functioning again, and DPW will be doing that. That's the end of my report. If you folks have any questions.
I do. So you mentioned the asbestos, and I think it would be good to get that decision tonight. Do you have a price on that, or you need a bid?
I don't want to have to bid that. I couldn't, GZA wouldn't even give me a price
So
to
you
do
don't have
that.
like even an estimate?
Not-
No.
I didn't even put a ballpark to it.
Okay.
So building on the environmental questions, you said before that the reportable environmental hazards had been remediated prior to the purchase. That's great. But then there's the photo remediation and other cleanup efforts that are going on sort of post-acquisition. So I'm just kind of curious, how much of that needs to be done before public access can be granted? Because you're running this kind of FIDO experiment, but is this sort of cleanups that still need to be done in addition to the stuff that was reportable before you're comfortable having people come to the island? And if there's a list of those things, how much of that work needs to be done before public access?
If there's areas that are above the direct contact criteria, they should not have the public on them. So we are looking to address areas with not just the FIDO remediation, but in different methods so that we can open up the majority of that island. There will still be sections that will need to be addressed. We have talked about and are planning, I believe, some way to keep the public off those areas while we address them, but still be able to open up that island to the public hopefully in the summer of next year.
And keep in mind that it's 8 acres out of 60 that present a problem. So we would, if nothing else, just fence those acres off. So it's not the whole island. I don't want people to be confused.
How many underground tanks are there?
2.
Okay, so we're only talking about testing 2, one at the main house, and where's
One
the
is
other one?
the other one's the Dolphin House, which is attached to the main house.
Oh, okay.
There's a smaller tank just outside that building.
And those are pretty old.
I believe they are.
They are.
I believe they are.
So, not specific to what you said, but general organizational matter. Just listening to Ed speak the last 2 meetings, it seems that, if we were to break down the work or think about different areas of focus or different committee work for the board, the way I see it, there's environmental assessments, there's infrastructure work, there are existing structures, which are all matters that have attention, maybe coastal issues related to that, uniqueness. I wonder if at some point, do we organize ourselves to have specific inquiries into those areas singularly as a committee or subcommittees, just so, because we could sit here and ask questions and review documents, for a whole dedicated meeting related to the environment. The downside to Ed, if there were subcommittees, is that, I don't know, I guess I would have to go to every one of those meetings because he's the one who has a lot of the information. But just hearing what I've been hearing for the last 2 meetings, I'm sort of thinking about next steps to do our work.
So one of the ideas we had to start to engage this group with town staff that's working on the stuff that you're talking about. And just to preface that, what I don't want to do is set up committees to do that. Committees are formal entities that have minutes and warned meetings and video and all that. We're going to have that later on, but I don't think we need that right now. That said, maybe having some of the public members of our group start to serve as liaisons with some of the town staff so that separate from these committee meetings, they can attend some of these discussions, go to the island, have a meeting with Ed in his office to get up to speed, but also particularly given you all's experience to maybe ask some questions that mere mortals like us cannot answer or ask. Because then what could happen is that with those sort of offline discussions, you guys could come back and say, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I've learned working with as a liaison to some of these department heads. And so Monica and I have talked about this. A couple suggestions for that might be to have somebody be an environmental liaison, right, to come in and just stay up to speed on all the work that's being done to, as per our discussion just now, get the island ready to go from an environmental standpoint. Another idea would be just the access and activities, right? So this would cover everything from getting there and parking to kind of what you can do and can't do once you are there. And so part of that is both Public Works, but it could also be Parks and Rec, just thinking about this more broadly. The third area might be just the infrastructure. We've been talking about that with this work here, but there's also other island work to kind of finalize all that. And the last one, I met earlier this week with the Coastal Advisory Commission. Those guys have a ton of knowledge about everything pertaining to the water that's touching this island and could help us with regulations or perspectives on how to think about that. They are enthusiastic about trying to be of assistance to that committee. So conveniently, that's 4 areas, I think reasonably discrete, that you guys could tackle. I'm not saying we need to come up with assignments for that tonight, but what I'd like to do is just pop out an email to the group that summarizes exactly the 4 areas that I talked to, and maybe the 4 of you guys, Bruce isn't here, but 4 of you guys could decide which ones are of personal interest to you. And then what we'll do is just formalize your liaison connection with not just Ed, but anyone else he deems appropriate that you guys could spend time with, and that could be your sort of the kickoff of sort of your efforts to the committee. Reactions. Mike, does that kind of get at what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's it's the same thing and just a slightly different form. But I think it's important that we have engagement on these issues and diving in to it to make it efficient, so the group can really consider all of these
Well said.
important matters.
Other comments?
Yeah, I agree with that. In the committees I've been a part of over the years, allocating the load, if you will,
Yep.
and parties that are either interested or skilled or both, to focus on them and then bring it back. Makes
Or they just weren't in the room and we assigned it to them, so.
Yeah. But it makes it more efficient, instead of moving around like a group trying to cover everything.
Okay.
Or
Yeah,
as fast as the
That makes
weakest
sense.
link.
Yep, good, okay.
I think it's the way our board functions. We sort of assign individuals to certain tasks, and they work on that and report back, and I think it's a very efficient way to get stuff done.
Okay, so environmental, infrastructure, access, and coastal advisory. I'll send out a note that just says what those are, and then try to identify the folks that are.
Maybe a little bit more in depth.
There might be, there's more, not to worry. In fact, do comments add to that?
Well, I think like permitting, things like that, if you have, some experience in that, things like that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we don't have to limit it to our 4 public members, so others, officials on the board want to get involved in any of those things. You've clearly got a voting interest, so we can do that. But in any case, I'll send that around, and what we'll do is try to get assignments to that worked out so that you guys can spend some time on that between now and the meeting at the end of October, and then everybody can kind of report on their work and how that particular area is going.
I don't know if this is a fifth area or not, John, but when we were talking about laying out pocket parking and fencing off certain areas that might need to be fenced off, it occurred to me, We have multiple residents there that public shouldn't have access to. There's some hazards still remaining despite your efforts that should probably be fenced off. Or would that come under one of these, part of like access and activities, but to coordinate the parking that's being envisioned or designed with where folks are going to want to go? It doesn't do much good to put 15 spaces in front of the house that someone's living in,
Correct.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Sort of obvious, but
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think maybe it comes all under infrastructure, but coordinating stuff like that, it's going to be pretty important. That it's just like you were saying before, we don't want to spend money and then have to undo it because we've decided parking needs to go some other place.
Yep.
Okay.
Everyone who's occupying one of the structures now knows that this is going to happen, so they know there's going to be people walking around their land, right? No surprises there.
No.
So they shouldn't be upset.
No, there shouldn't be. Okay.
I think that was all part of the leases that they signed. There's an acknowledgement that this was the public park, acknowledgement about sort of what space they're actually leasing and so forth. So I think from a contractual standpoint, it's been made clear.
Yes.
Okay, if I were to summarize what I'm hearing, so work continues apace, if you will, kind of depending on whether it's Jim or you, it's sometime between May and July, that we would envision public access being ready to go at that point. And we've got a number of projects going on, from the roads at the entrance to the infrastructure on the island to environmental to coastal to all those things that appear to be in progress. And are you seeing any bottlenecks or anything that maybe the committee or other officials could help with us at this moment? Or is it sort of steady as she goes?
I need more time
Okay,
in the day
okay.
to work on.
Jim has an extra 5 minutes.
He took away a whole month, though.
Yeah, maybe Ed, on that, I mean, I think, I continue to be impressed with the amount of sort of bandwidth that our staff has sort of across all of our different departments, but to the extent you think there are certain areas here where we need to bring in sort of a third-party consultant design, for some of the larger projects and so forth, let's make sure we think about that as well, so that we're...
I think we dipped our toe in the water there on that access way to see how that works out for us. We have a good company working with us, so I did. That was more than I could handle, and do in a timely fashion.
Yeah, this was done by a consultant.
You didn't
No.
draw this yourself, Penny?
No. Pen and ink. But yeah, no, we thought because of the approval process, the many boards that we're going to go in front of, to have a consultant that's done all of that made the most sense going forward.
somewhat related to that, Ed, I've gotten questions from the RTM as it relates to, it's great that this bandwidth is able to handle some of this, and I highly support third parties being brought in where necessary. Do you have the ability to track? Some of these are one-time expenses, some of these fall into road maintenance, some of them fall into catch basin maintenance, all things that I know on the budget process are allocated. Some will be new areas and ongoing. Will you have the ability to track that so that in a future cycle, there's visibility as to what relates to the normal categories of DPW that we have, and then some new categories that might pop up as ongoing?
It's probably not as easy for myself to do that as it would be for maybe Tony, because he'll spend a little bit more time and focus on one thing, where I'm moving around a lot on a lot of different topics. And I understand, and I did watch some of the rules and the RTM one where they had made the discussion about tracking of staff time, and we're just starting to have that conversation with the town administrator and finance and the first selectman. So we'll come up with a plan to address it somehow.
Great, and I didn't mean you specifically. I know you've got a great team behind you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that update, Ed.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or anything to add to the proceedings tonight?
No.
Monica, Jim, all in? Okay. All right, I think our next meeting is the 25th. I actually don't have that down. Do you happen to know whether it's the 25th?
Going with the third Wednesday.
6:30,
Wednesday
I
would be-
misstated yesterday.
And does 6:30 still work for everybody?
So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
16th.
Yeah, the third Wednesday would be the 18th.
18th, sorry.
So 10:18?
Yeah, 10/18 at 6:30, that all still works, everybody?
Yep.
Yes. All right, so I will get out more information with Monica on the team assignment options and let you guys all get back to us, and we will be ready to go next month. If there was nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn? Mr. Burke, second. Mr. Palin, all in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you.